All right, this is day 2 of posting my next topic. So these were just 4 that came to mind, but it's about 4 things you need to answer before you start your web design or web development agency actually goes live, right? So number one, I'm just going to get straight into it is my agency a product-led growth or sales-led growth motion? So like what exactly does this mean? Most of you probably don't know this unless I don't know, you learned this at a different corporate gig or anything of that sort. But if it's your first time trying out, the world of just entrepreneurship, or let alone SaaS specifically, you probably haven't heard of it. But the flip side to it is you've probably experienced it, right? So in this picture, I know that chart on the right-hand side of the years and the companies listed is kind of blurry just because it's a massive photo. But if you look in the very top right, you'll see Cloudflare on there. There's a few other ones such as um, Zoom, Slack. I listed some of those in here. Um, but before we get into that, right, I want to start with sales-led growth. What does that exactly mean? Sales-led growth, in essence, is pretty much companies that heavily focus on their sales department to drive the growth of the company. It sounds pretty self-explanatory, and to an extent it is, minus the whole metric side of things in regards to what goes into their SQLs, which is sales qualified lead, conversion rates, everything of that sort. There's a lot of metrics that go into that. Same thing with product-led growth. So that's sales-led growth. And then product-led growth is where you literally have the product to some extent do the job of the sale for you. So what I mean by that is one big metric that people measure on this is the activation rate, is what it's called. Um, an informal term for it is the aha moment, as in when a user, let's say like yourself, goes on a website and pretty much caves in on buying or paying for the subscription or whatever the fuck you're looking at on that website. Product led growth has been a very hot topic for the last 4 or 5 years, I'd say, even more, but specifically since COVID. If you look at the SaaS world, you'll probably notice a major thing, which is um, almost everything's subscription based now. As a consumer, I hate it a lot of the times unless it's a really good product. Um, but as a business owner, it's a great model, right? When you think of SaaS specifically and startups in general as well, there's one major or excuse me, I should say there's 3 major metrics that are looked at to see how profitable a SaaS is and how well it's doing in terms of scaling. The 3 are MRR, ARR, and churn rate. MRR is monthly recurring revenue. ARR, as you can guess, is annualized recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue. And the third one's churn rate, which is the percentage of people that eventually unsubscribe. If you could keep that rate to sub 5%, you're golden, as long as you're scaling adequately. But this is a question you should be asking yourself in regards to how do I go about this, right? And you're probably wondering, well, it's like, well, if I do web design or web development, then like, in what position am I going to put out a product-led growth motion? When does that make sense? I'll tell you where it makes sense. That's why I also included web development because a lot of these folks on all these platforms mostly just focus on web design because you don't necessarily need to know as much as web development to do it, even if you're outsourcing it to someone do the work for you. But that's bullshit, right? And I'll tell you why. Number one, for a fact, web design is way more oversaturated than actual custom web development. And when I say web development, I'm talking about custom web applications being built, CRMs, things of that sort. A lot harder to get clients in there, but definitely pays more. And you could find a mesh of those too, but not to go off topic here. Picture this, right? You have a web design agency and you get on a call with someone that's interested, or you hook them on a call that off a cold call that booked an appointment, whatever. The first thing they're going to be asking is what the price is, right? And if I'm talking to someone that just started a brand new business and I try to pitch them a website for like 7 or 8 grand, they're gonna hang up on you or just say, get the fuck out of here, right? This was a very hard thing for me to overcome initially until I started realizing why that is. And it's really just a simple case of put yourself in their shoes type of deal. But then you analyze or work backwards and realize what would make the sense. It's also why you hear all these gurus talk about you got to lead with the value you're providing versus the services, things of that sort, which for the most part is true. But if you take a hybrid approach in between sales and product led growth, I'll give you an example here, is you charge them, let's say $250, $300, 4 or 5, whatever you feel comfortable with. I think that's a decent start to start with, is from like 250 to 500, depending on how confident you are. And you say pretty much the website's free. You pay me a monthly retainer. Think of it as insurance, and what's included in that for $250 a month is a basic 5-page website that we're going to completely customize for you. It's going to give you unlimited edits and revisions within Merit, and you could clarify what that is if they ask, but that's up to you to decide. You don't want to be in a position where you let them do, I don't know, 10 pages added on every week, and then it doesn't make sense to use that model. So you got to sprinkle in some services added into there, where it's like maybe $50 for each page, $50 for each page added on onwards, and so on and so on. So that's the questions you need to be asking yourself. And to compare this to real life everyday stuff, I mean, just look at this right now. If I go to slack.com, right? I go to price. They have a free version, meaning I don't have to pay jack shit if I want to actually try out this product, right? I go to salesforce.com. There is no pricing tab on here whatsoever. Okay? The pricing tab is pretty much the contact us button right here. And see, you fill out this form. It's a sales qualified lead, or MQL in some instances, marketing qualified lead. And then some sales rep's gonna hit you up. And then only once you get on that call, you'll actually get the pricing. A lot of people are pissed at this because they're just price shopping sometimes. They don't want to have to go through all this, get added to some cadence, and then you have some 20-year-old SDR fucking pestering you for just a basic question, right? So that's an easy way to distinguish sales-led growth and product-led growth here. The part that's been most effective for the past couple of years is, back to this slide, the hybrid between the two. So what do I mean by that? It's also called a reverse free trial in some cases. So for example, while this is free and it always will be free, usually what happens, or every time that I've used Slack as a new account, this is what's happened, is you get your workspace set up and they give you all these premium features, but they're limited. They're 2 weeks long until they shut them off, right? And so what ends up happening, for example, like one thing that's important to me when I'm in a workspace or a group chat of some sort where it's my day-to-day business stuff, it's the chat history, right? Like if you have a team of, excuse me, 5, 10, 15 people and you're sending hundreds of pings an hour, at some point you're going to scroll back to look for that shit. That gets turned off in this case once the trial's up. Do you get where this whole aha moment comes in now? It's you're using the workspace, you like the features of Slack, everything's going well, and that piece alone is so valuable to you that you will stop and consider, can I pay $438 a month for this? The answer is you probably fucking can't. So that's reverse free trial, and just to further illustrate the picture of how you should be thinking of these things. The next slide. How is intent changing with buyers? I'm sure you've gone on LinkedIn before, social media, where there's people that argue cold calling's dead, cold calling's not dead, things of that sort. I'll let you jump to your own conclusion on that. I confidently can say I don't think it's dead. I think it might be dying to some extent, but on the flip side, I actually argue the approach you have to take is changing versus cold calling as a whole just dying, right? That's number one. These websites right here, I listed 3. Really, it's just RB2B and 6sense, but these are buyer intent websites, right? If you go on an average corporate website and it asks you to approve cookies for that website, the chances are it is consensually taking your data from your IP address and giving their team an idea of where this user is based out of to cross-reference, let's say on LinkedIn, or, it'll say like, I don't know, construction owner founder, or let's say accountant founder based out of Phoenix, Arizona. All right. And then they try to work backwards and figure out who the fuck that was. But then it's like, you got to think about what kind of approach you're making with that. Hey, I saw you were on my website. Like, that's not a reason to buy. So take this with a grain of salt. But There's a term for this that's becoming popular now where it's called inbound led outbound, meaning you're getting this intent as an indirect version of inbound and trying to use an outbound outreach to get these people to respond with more relevancy. I thought I'd put these out because they're very interesting. This one's crazy, just because of the fact that, and I've tried it maybe once. I didn't want to pay for it because I wasn't getting that many users when I tried it on a certain website. But you inject this as like a snippet on your website, and it outright gives you the name of the person on there. It's accurate for the most part. I'd say like 8 out of 10, at least from when I used it. But yeah, if you want to check it out, go for it. It's not related to the video at all. They're just the first to give you the actual user versus just an intent of a persona. Next thing. With intent being in mind on questioning how it's changing with buyers, this right-hand side here is benchmark data of a survey of C-level executives that was taken by Gartner. That is the biggest research and advisory firm in the world. Most of you probably haven't even heard of them before. I actually, at some point in time, worked for them for a couple of years. A very interesting company and really enjoyed it. But the point of this is to showcase to you from a marketing standpoint what the data shows. It's a little bit outdated, but it's still relevant enough because it's post-pandemic numbers minus 2019. But just look at it across the board, all the different channels people are using to get customers, right? That's why you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. It's similar to the previous video I made and some of the mistakes that I made, which is why I'm explaining it here. But there's email, social marketing, SEO, paid social, digital display advertising, web, organic traffic, third-party events, all that stuff. Take your own conclusions from this. I just put this in here to show that it's diversified across the board. And that's how you should be thinking about these things, right? So I have another slide here in a bit that'll help explain this from a sales perspective that's super relevant to you all. But with this in mind, you want to think about a very common topic as well, which is to niche or not. I'm sure most of the videos you've seen have said you should be niching. It's a way to stand out and specialize in one field. I disagree with that statement to a great extent, not completely, but I have a personal opinion towards it, and this is what the opinion is if you go the niche route, you're limited to just that route. That's a fact on the spot, right? And the argument can be, well, why do I care if I'm limited to that industry if I'm doing well in it? Also very relevant. The way that I look at this, I look at it from like a glass half empty, half full perspective. What I mean by that is when I'm starting out, I don't give a shit about as much as getting a specific niche that I tap into. I care about getting clients, right? Because I'm trying to establish the business. So if I expose myself to, let's say, 8 different verticals or industries, it's the same word, I'm much more likely to get in this TAM territory, which is the total addressable market, right? So you have TAM, SAM, and SOM. TAM is the whole circle. SAM is the serviceable area where the audience that exists for that. So think that's where the niche area is. And then the SOM is the portion of the addressable market that a business can own, right? So by not going niche route, this SAM portion would be much wider along this red area of the TAM versus being dialed into one vertical. And the way that I look at it is if I get as many clients as I can initially, and really do my best at them, you're more than likely at some point in time going to get referred by these clients, right? And even then, there's a 50-50 chance that it's the same vertical or not. But the point is I think you should be getting the most amount of clients you can initially. Let's say you get to 30 or 40, and then you have an idea to look back on the demographics of, all right, well, I have 70% of clients in companies that own dental offices or accounting firms or anything in the home service industry or just SaaS companies that need websites, whatever it may be. And then you can kind of decide, all right, like I have an adequate portfolio to literally just double down on this niche if I wanted to. Let me do that. I think it's a great food for thought. The last slide that I have here is having a multi-channel sales approach. So similar to the marketing multi-channel slide from 2 slides ago, having a sales approach is crucial, right? You've probably heard this before, like start with friends and family, network, all that stuff. It's not just that, right? This is a no-brainer. Cold outreach, network, word of mouth, SEO, and ads. Ads is an air quote. I don't think that they necessarily don't work. I'm sure they do, and I know a lot of instances that they do. But for this specific field, I just feel like you could very easily lose money if you don't know what you're doing. I personally don't know ads like that, so I haven't touched them. Right? But you want to be diversifying this. Going to networking events in person, chamber of commerce, whatever it might be in your area. Get out there and show face. That's it for this video, and on to the next.